Welcome to Behind the DM Screen. It is September of 2025. I am Jeff Greiner. I am here as often usual with Mike Shea. Say hi, Mike.
Hello.
And Sam Dillon. Say hi, Sam.
Hi, Sam. Perfect. I am here as often as well.
Yes. And we're three DMs talking about our games, helping each other out, and that is your intro. So, Sam, you're going to talk more because you get to go first this week. Month, whatever it is.
Wow. Cool. Okay. Well, I'm. Ooh, I didn't expect to go first. Okay, this is fun. All right, I have two games that I'm actively running. I am running my Arden Bowl game, which is still going, which has had 28 sessions now, and I'm also running a Star Wars game that just finished its second session last night. So, and then I also have a play-by-post traveler game that is still going, but those are very slow, so not much has happened in that one. So Arden Bowl. So, I feel like I could be a broken record, but I just effing love this setting. It's just so great. Because it's speaking to exactly the type of game that I want to be playing and running right now. It's not for everybody, but for me, for the particular thing that I want to be doing with my D&D, it's super easy. I don't have to worry about it. It's a ton of fun, and there's very little prep for me now at this point because I prepped for months, right? And it's just fun, and things happen that also still surprise me. So, for example, in the last session that we had last Sunday, they got to this place and they ended up activating a teleporter, and they ended up going to a place I was not expecting them to go. But the place that they went actually has some relation to one of the players. One of the players got a rumor when they first did character creation. They get a set of rumors that I would just roll randomly, and this character happens to be a dwarf, and the rumor was about a dwarf, an old famous dwarven smith who famously earned his place in the ancient city and got the accolades and the respect of all of the human Arcontians, and was given room to sort of have its own forge, and he had learned how to use this special forge technique and all these things, and so he's very famous. And he had hidden his forge away in a part of the mountain of the cliff that no one could get to except through teleportation. And that was actually the rumor that the guy had, was this famous person's tomb and his forge are still locked away, and the coordinates to how to teleport there have been lost to time. And so when they teleported in, and they teleported into this room that has this sunken little area in the floor that's coffin sized, and it had a box under it, but then it had this bed made of rope. So it had these ropes strung across and in this interesting pattern. And on top of the rope, laying on this bed of ropes, was a desiccated dwarven body. And there were some things around the room and different stuff that they could see. And then when one of the magic user was okay, well, some of this stuff that's in here must be magical, but I don't want to touch everything and move everything, and I don't want to disturb the body, and I don't want to do everything. So he had a wand of detect magic, and he pulls out the wand of detect magic, and of course any magic at all happening in this tomb wakes up the famous, the ancient, but the wraith of I shouldn't say it wakes him up. It activates the wraith that's in the room. But the wraith is of this dwarven smith who's really mad because he got betrayed by his assistant, and that's how he died. Is he got locked into that room because it had a special magical key opening, and his assistant stole the key, forged a fake replacement, put the fake replacement back. The key was actually on a ring, a ring that fits your hand. And he forged a new one and made it so close that he was able to switch the rings And so the famous forge dwarf got stuck in that little tomb area because he couldn't get out anymore because his key didn't work.
Right.
And his assistant, he blames his assistant. So when he pops up, he's basically like, who disturbs my sleep and who is disturbing my resting place? And the magic user tries to step up and say something, but he had just in the last session found this magic item that when you wear it, it gives you intelligence, but it's based on an ancient figure from the time when it was created, and the part of the magical effect makes you be kind of sarcastic and mocking. And so the magic user tried to stand up and say, we are, this group, and we've stumbled across your tomb, and what led to your demise, and try to be nice about it. And instead, what he said was something really sarcastic and crappy. And so the wraith was like, "Who are you to talk to me like this? You're in my resting place, And the magic user said, "Well, who are you?" And the dwarf at that moment figured it out, like, oh, this is the dwarf. And he goes, "That's Zorak, of course." And then, of course, the wraith is like, "Oh, you know of me. Okay, so now let's talk." So then they got to make a deal instead of having him just.
The dwarf's name is Zorak?
The wraith's name is Zorak, but the dwarf in the party who had that rumor, the name of the ancient forge thing was in the rumor.
I'm just saying,
when the magic
Zorak is a character from Space Ghost Coast to Coast, so
yes, that's not surprising. Yes.
My players would have a good time with that.
Yeah. There are all kinds of things like that in here.
Okay.
The Zorak Zorak in this story is not anything like the character from Space Ghost, but it is. Yeah, I'm sure the name is somewhat derivative of something somewhere, some inside joke from his home game, right? So that's what happened. So it was perfect timing, and it was a really cool moment because the dwarf character, then dwarf player, the player of the dwarf character got to sort of step up and say, "Wait, I know who that is. His name is Zorak." And then they got to have a conversation, and the magic user had to be kind of like, "Well, it's probably a good thing because I'm wearing this stupid magic item that makes me very sarcastic. So I probably would have pissed off the wraith, and he would have smited us, and that would have been it," which is true. He probably would have, and they would have been stuck. Instead, they got to strike a deal to agree to avenge the death, and then they can lay his body to rest appropriately. And then in doing that, they have to learn how to activate the forge. So it kind of has set them on an entire new little adventure, and they have no idea where they are. But the dwarf has stone sense, and one of the other PCs has a cloak of dwarven make, which lets him also have stone sense. So they sense that they are like 1,200 feet below where they were before. So they are deep, deep, deep down, and they have no idea where they are or how to get out. And it's really, really, really funny and really cool because now they are scared crapless. And it's fun when they're scared because they get really careful, but then they get bored, and so they do crazy stuff, and then it ends up being fun for everybody. So that's what's going on in that game. They have no idea how they're going to get out. They are convinced they're going to die before they can actually avenge this guy.
The teleportation that they use to get there is a one way. There's not like a circle on that end.
Yep, one way. There is a way out, but not in the room that they're in. They have to actually now go explore a little bit around where they are, and they can find a way out. The way back to the surface is wrought with much danger. So they're going to have to be very particular about which way they choose to go and how they treat the people they run into, because they are in a uncharted territory at this point. Which is,
are they going to face this Iron Golem? I'm looking through my Arden Vol thing here, and I see Zorak's got an Iron Golem he made that smashes through walls and attacks people.
They might, because it depends on if they find the body of the assistant that betrayed him, they might get the actual amulet that lets them control the Iron Golem. So they might face the Iron Golem, or they might have that thing as a pet from now on.
Yikes.
So
either of those is terrible.
Yes, either of those is really, really bad. Although it will be hard for that Iron Golem to get out of the current location. Like he'll stay like on that floor, but he probably will not leave that floor. Depending, it depends on how creative they are. Because if they're creative enough, I'll let them take it. It's totally a fair game. So yeah, it's very cool. And
Golems.
I don't have any idea what's going to happen.
Constructs like that actually make really good little controllable sidekicks or whatever. I find because they don't heal. So it's a limited resource anyway. Oh, it goes along with them. It gets beat up and slowly it whittles away and then goes away.
Yeah. The other thing is this area of certain areas of this place are dangerous because of different elements that are in them. If they take this guy like 3 floors up, there's all kinds of like fantasy sci-fi materials, and there are like sentry droids that'll just destroy the golem with no problem, right? So like it's not as if he's an all-powerful thing that they suddenly will have and they'll be able to just run roughshod over everything in the dungeon.
AC 3, 80 hit points, and it can be healed. It can be healed by fire. So
by fire only.
Keep that sucker going on for a long time.
Yeah, the fire, though, has to be from the Forge of Zorak, which actually has a special magical item element to it. So if they don't recharge that thing, then he can't be healed.
Gotcha.
And they have to go back to the Forge to do the healing. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Then the way I have mine, I don't know if that's actually, I don't remember if I read that or if that's some idea I came up with. But yeah, that's how. Because I didn't want it to be just like, oh, hey, here's a win every battle
in here
for a while.
Just says that can be healed by fire.
Yeah. The part of the reason I do that is because of something that happened before, because they ran into a thing where fire healed something before. And so if they like catch on, they'll be able to make that connection and then they'll get a benefit from that. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's super fun. And the thing is, like, that's exactly what this kind of dungeon is meant for, where they suddenly get teleported somewhere where they have no idea where they are. And now we spend the next like 4 or 5 sessions trying to get them out of there without everybody dying. And they're at the point now where they are like 5th and 6th level. And 5th and 6th level in OSE and Old School Essentials is like really powerful, depending on what kind of weapons you have and what kind of magic items you have. And they just got a big cache of like fabulous magic items. If they're willing to be creative enough with those items, they can completely decimate this level and they won't really have a problem. The thing is, they're very shy about using their items because they don't want to break them or accidentally trigger a curse or something like that. And so they're very leery about what's happening.
It's the common RPG fallacy of you make it to the end of the campaign or the video game or whatever, and you've got 99 potions that you never touched or scrolls or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, they really hoard their resources and they try to not. And I've been talking to them throughout the whole campaign about, because they would find things and then they just leave it back at the end that they were renting this big chest, this big protected chest from the innkeeper who was charging them like 5 gold a night to make sure that nobody got into his basement to steal their stuff, you know? And then they would take a trip back to town and they would take a bunch of stuff to town and put it in the vault, right? And I'm like, okay, but you're not using those things. So you're not getting the benefit of what those things might mean in the setting and what that use of that item might bring you. It might have effects on different members of different factions that you're never going to experience those because you're just leaving that stuff behind. So they started like, okay, let's actually go. They spent like half a session, a couple sessions ago, going through everything and saying, okay, would somebody really use this? Do we even care about this? Because if not, we should just go sell it. That way we have liquid cash. And if we are going to use it, we should be taking it with us. So we need to figure out who can carry that and what we can do with it. And that's a resource management thing too, right? And I know a lot of people don't enjoy that kind of gaming, but for me, it's not about the encumbrance aspect of it, which is what a lot of people bristle against, right? They bristle against. My thing is, I want you to be a little bit realistic about what you can carry. And so you need to be intentional about your choices, but you ought to be using those items. Why would you? That'd be like, I'm a person of my own, in real life. I've got 1 car, right? If I had 10 cars and I only ever drove 1 of them and I wasn't a collector, like I know there are car collectors, right? But like if I had 10 cars, what would the 9 cars be for?
Right.
Like it would be such a waste of money and my own resources, right, to do that. So that's kind of what they're doing is they get all these cars, right, all these useful items, and then they just leave them. It's kind of like, start using that. Start using it. It's going to be fun. Use it. If it breaks, oh well. If it messes something up, oh well. If it's really powerful, great. Put it in your back pocket, and then you can use it when you need it, which is what they did with 1 magic item. And that's kind of the turning point where that happened, and they got to use an item that turned out to be extremely helpful to them, and it made it so that they didn't just get wiped. And now they're like, maybe we really should start carrying around these items and start using them and not worry about like if they get broken or depleted or whatever. So there's been like a little shift, and they're now doing that. But of course, then the first thing that happens is they get transported to like eight or 9 levels down, and now they're like, oh crap.
Well,
so it's fun.
But using your stuff and the consequences of using them, even when there are consequences, like that's what makes the game interesting, you know?
Right. Yeah. Well, especially in an old school game, you know, in old school, you don't earn anything when you level up. You get some hit points, right? Generally. And if you're a magic user, you get to cast more spells, right? Mm-hmm. But otherwise, there's really no benefit. Like the level up is to give you the more hit points and to get you a little more respect in the in-game world, right? And then you got more money, right? Because by definition, since you're getting XP from the gold that you're getting, now you have more money built up and you can spend that money on important things to keep you alive, but then also you're finding magic items. And the power that you have as a group comes from magic items and from items that you use, even if they're not magical, but you use them creatively. That's where your real power comes from. Because no old school essentials character, I don't care what level they are, no old school essential character going up against a really powerful enemy is going to win on a 1-to-1 fight with just an even fight, because then it's just down to the dice. Did you get lucky when you rolled your dice and you hit him before he hit you? Because you're both going to die.
And eventually that luck's going to wear out.
Eventually it's going to run out, right? And so you have to learn how to use your items creatively, and then that helps make the game fun for everybody. Because sometimes I don't even know what they're going to do, right? When they pulled out the item that they used that I said that was the turning point. What it does is it turns the thing that you fire it at, it's basically casting a spell, but it turns that thing into a 3-inch size item. Whatever it was, you can point it at one item and it'll shrink it to 3 inches. So whatever its biggest, dimension was, that goes down to 3 inches and everything else shrinks to be in line with that. And so they used it to good effect. And that is scary. It's permanent. It's scary. So you don't want to point it at a friend accidentally and have it go off. So
that's powerful.
That's powerful. But if they had never used it, they'd never know what it did, they would never have been able to get right. So, and I didn't know.
There's no identify spell in OSE.
So there is an identify spell in 1E, but the identify spell in 1E/Osric is really onerous, and it has it's very it's only a first level spell, but there's only there's a 5% chance of it there's like a 5% chance per I don't even remember how it goes now. I've read so many different versions of it, but basically there's a percentage chance that it won't even give you any information. Sometimes it'll give you one piece of information, sometimes no information. Sometimes it won't tell you if it's cursed. Sometimes
it's unreliable.
It's totally unreliable, and it takes that resource. And so I waited until the magic user got to 4th level, which is really relatively high for an OSE magic user. And then I let them find an identify scroll so they could write it into their spell book. And it's a little bit more lenient than that. So there's no real chance of it failing. But it still takes a resource. And so I sort of I let go of that. But at first I didn't want them to just identify stuff, because the thing is, an identify spell never tells you the lore.
Right.
So if you go around and all you're doing is identifying everything, part of this dungeon is just lost. Unless I say, okay, well, this identify spell is going to tell you the lore too. So what I wanted them to do at first was to go back to town and find a sage to tell them about these things, because they needed to know the lore too. That way, when they start getting clues later on, the clues make sense rather than just, it's just some other hokey pokey history stuff. This
is why there was I think in 3rd edition, there was a psionic ability and I think there was a magic item associated with this ability that gave you object reading. I think is what it was called. And I liked that over identify because then it's steeped in lore. It tells you about the last user of it. So you can figure out what it does because you get visions of them using it or whatever, but you're getting all this lore. And then if you keep going, you can get visions of previous owners before that and whatever. So you could get a lot of lore actually, and also learn a lot about the item. That was super useful. The only problem with it then is, of course, if you just keep going and going, if the player using it just keeps going and going and going. The DM's eventually like, okay, we've gone like 3 deep. I don't have any more. Like, stop it.
Right. Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah. So I actually talked to the player of the magic user off out of game, right? And I told him, look, I'm going to give you an identify spell. Because up until then, all they had was a detect curse so that they could make sure they weren't going to get cursed by accidentally using something that was cursed.
That's not nothing.
Right. It's not nothing. And I gave it to them because they already had found a couple cursed items and got stuck with them. Right. And then had to deal with it. But so I told them, I'm going to give you an identify spell, but I need you to understand that I'm not always going to give you the lore with the item. But if there is lore attached to this, I will tell you when you cast the identify spell. And then I am going to expect you as a PC to go research and find out that lore. So you're going to have to convince the party to go back to town or go find a sage or, hire somebody to start living up at the inn so that you have easy access to them so that you can actually get the lore, because the lore is the game.
Sure.
And if you're not getting the lore, you're not going to succeed. You're going to start not succeeding because you're not going to have the lore to be able to solve the clues, right?
Things like figuring out that wraith was Zorak and being able to talk them through
exactly.
things, Yep.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Anyway, so that's it.
Very good. Fun times. Well, someday
I'll talk about my Star Wars game next time.
Someday I want to hear about your Star Wars game. I thought you were wrapping up at one point. I'm like, all right, tell us about Star Wars in 4 minutes, but then you kept going. So.
Well, I'll tell you in 2 seconds. It's the FFG version of Star Wars, so it's Edge of the Empire, but I let them use characters from Force and Destiny and Age of Rebellion if they want. So we do have a Force sensitive. It takes place 10 years before the Battle of Yavin, so it's deep in the heart of Empire, right? And they are in an area of space called the Centrality, which does not have a huge amount of canon associated with it. Okay. So I get to basically do what I want. I'm running it very sandbox. They're kind of going wherever they want. But right now, they've just run afoul of a hut and an Imperial thing and a local police. So, and that's in session 2. So there you go.
Sweet. Very good. I look forward to hearing more about it. All right. I do want to, before we move on to the next person, I want to remind folks listening to this that if you want to support the show and help me pay the bills and keep things going, you can go to patreon.com/The Tome Show, become a patron for as little as $1 a month. And we super appreciate that. Next up, it is my turn. So I am still running Phandelver and Below. I've had several sessions since the last time we chatted. I think the last time we chatted was it right before my vacation or right after? I might think it was right before my vacation. And so we ended up taking like 3 weeks off because I was gone for 2 Fridays and some of my players were gone on the Friday before that. And so it had been a while since we played, but given that, some things have happened. I think the last time we talked, they had completed the excavation of Zorzilla's Rest. They got the information about where Adventure has written 3 more obelisk pieces are located, Tal Hundredth Crypts and Gibbet Crossing. But I've added a 4th in a location that I created called Stonehome, which is the home of the stone giants that was lifted off of the peak of the mountain where they lived, was lifted up off of the mountain and has dangling tentacles on it and whatever from the corruption of the Far Realm and all that. But that is one of my players' homes. So giving him a big spotlight moment, but I'm squeezing in a bunch of other spotlights. One of my other characters is connected to the storm giants off of the coast of Neverwinter. And so I'm having the storm giant daughter that he was sort of raised with because he was raised by giants, is corrupted and is the one who brought the obelisk piece to Stonehome and is there. So it's going to be a bunch of stone giants and Goliaths running around. A bunch of them are mutated. Some of them aren't, and they're hiding away and whatever. I statted up stats for mutant sheep and goats that have a psychic scream, but they're not immune to their own psychic scream. So it's like little bombs that set off, and all of them start screaming all at once if they mess with them. But then they're going to get to the end and be like, wait a minute, what is this weird mutant storm giant doing here in the middle of this whole thing, right? And they got to figure that out, and the one character will have a connection to her and understand some of that. And so it's a big spotlight moment for one character whose player really has had minimal spotlights for the last 2 campaigns. So I wanted to really give him a moment here. But a little bit of mini spotlight moment for the one character who was raised by storm giants. I got a lot of players who decided they wanted to do giant stuff in the campaign that has nothing to do with giants. So I'm squeezing it in where I can. So anyway, they left Zorzilla's Rest, and they're like, oh, well, Stoneholm is actually closer than Phandalin. Rather than going back and catching our breath and whatever, let's check in with Stoneholm. We've heard this weird stuff going on, and now we heard about it here in Zorzilla's Rest, and that there's an obelisk piece there and all kinds of stuff to deal with. It's on the way. Let's stop by and make sure Kinsu's home is okay, that his people are all right or whatever. They went up, and I had statted out sort of random encounters with mutant stone giants or Goliaths, depending which part of the settlement they were in. Just sort of wandering around that could be relatively easily avoided. I mean, they're big. There's like 3 big giants walking around amongst these buildings or whatever. You could avoid. They're easy to see, and you could avoid them if you wanted to. They're like, oh no, these people. Let's go talk to them. You grew up here. You know them. So they ran up and purposely ran up to the random encounter patrol wandering the streets, and they're mutated, and they're not normal, and they're super aggressive. And so when eventually it of course turns into let's roll initiative and have a fight. And they spent the first like 2 or 3 rounds of the fight like trying to avoid the fight and get away and casting a lot of web spells and on all that kind of stuff. So of course, once they decided to turn around and fight, it went poorly because they gave their opponents like 2 extra free rounds to like set things up and whittle them down and all that kind of stuff. So they ended up running away from that fight. And after that, they were very like, oh no, we don't want to go to Stoneholm. That's clearly the hard one, even though it's the closest. We want to go somewhere else. And I was like, I spent so much time prepping that and not the other places because they were clear that that's where they wanted to go. But they got back to they fled there, went back to Phandalin, and Phandalin is starting to face some of the weird mutations and stuff. Like the people aren't really changing quite yet, but like there's strange fungus and things growing in the cracks of the buildings, and the people are becoming more irritated and aggressive. There's a handful of like little side quests you can do at that point when they go to Phandalin. And so it's like, oh, well, this will be a good way to introduce some of this stuff and give them a break and a chance to build up some resources and screw up their courage a little bit before trying to go back to Stoneholm and all that kind of stuff. And so they did those side quests. And one of them is dealing with a cow who basically ate it's not really radioactive, but basically radioactive grass in the pasture and grew tentacles. And then vomits gray oozes that they have to fight. And then one of them is hey, the tavern owner's kid has been gone for too long. Can you go out and fetch him? And he's found some. They're called encephalon gimules. They're basically little flying D4s with a few little tentacles sort of bopping around. But they'd gotten themselves trapped in a house that belonged to a fairly legendary dwarven paladin dedicated to Dumathoin, which ended up actually becoming meaningful because I have a dwarven paladin of Dumathoin in the party who's from Phandalin, so he knew the stories of this dwarf and whatever, and as part of having cleared it, they're like, oh well, this legendary dwarf's home is empty. I want to stake a claim. That's what people are. It's basically a frontier town, so people are running around staking claims. And he's like, I want to stake a claim. You stake a claim at the miners' exchange because those are the only people really keeping records on this frontier town. The miners' exchange is run by a woman who's a member of the Zentarim. So she's like, oh well, hey, I'll tell you what, I will take care of all the fees and paperwork and whatever for you to stake your claim, which is actually really minor. But I didn't tell him that. I'll take care of all of that for you. There's a couple of miners that have gone missing. This is one of the other side quests. And so there was some miners that had gotten trapped inside of the mine that they were staking a claim to by a shambling mound that was outside, but they squeezed into a small area so the mound couldn't get to them, and so they were trapped back there and trying to dig their way out. But in the process, found a silver vein. So the mine will continue successfully, hopefully afterwards. So they did all these side quests and ran around and got to establish their connection to the people in town a little more, which is important. They're sort of trying to be heroes in this town. There was an interesting, so one of the things I did is a while ago, months ago, maybe even a year ago now, I came up with this idea that was for D&D that was based on Blades in the Dark, where I created this system for them to have a group template. And so I connected it to the patron system, but then, they could pick, here's a list of potential templates to choose from, or you can come up with your own. And when you voluntarily face complications from this template, you get extra sort of points. I think I call it like renown points or whatever for your group. And as the more renown you get, you go up in tiers and you get extra benefits or whatever from it and all this kind of stuff. But one of the things they had to do there is they had to establish, when they first created their template, they had to establish an enemy and a rival. Their enemy was the spider, who is sort of the big villain of the first half of the Phandelver and Below, the big villain from Lost Mines of Phandelver, right? So they've kind of dealt with their enemy, but they created this other adventuring party to be their rivals called Ravensguard, or they named them Ravensguard. And so Ravensguard, when they went from Neverwinter to Phandalin, Ravensguard wasn't too far behind. And in the background, I keep alluding to the things that Ravensguard is doing. Like, they're the ones staying in town more and keeping the peace and running basically running the law enforcement. They converted the local brigands into law enforcement. With and then they were shocked when there were weird complications. Like, hey, these former brigands turned law enforcement are demanding bribes from people that they stop. And, well, yeah, you enlisted a bunch of brigands. And so they went to confront Ravensguard. It's like, you guys are in charge of making sure these brigands are doing their job right. You're the ones staying in town. And I've been kind of secretly alluding to things they're doing and pulling like quests from Icespire Peak, from that starter adventure, and say, because that's also in Phandalin. So I'm like, oh, well, they're off doing the Phandelver and Below stuff. Ravensguard is actually going off and doing the Icespire Peak adventures, and that's how they're leveling up and keeping up with the PCs and whatever. But they wanted to go confront them, and they run up to confront them and like, hey, you're supposed to be keeping track of the law enforcement here, the guard. You're in charge of this. They're taking bribes, and that is not okay. And they're like, look, you left us with brigands, with thieves, to be in charge of the place. We're doing the best we can, and we don't appreciate some self-righteous who are barely even here. They're running around seeking glory. They're not in here dealing with but at every opportunity you're cutting us down and undermining our authority. Like, screw you. And like, my players were like thoroughly chastised. They're like, oh crap, they're right. We've been undermining the law enforcement while we're getting mad at them for not doing a good job being law enforcement. Like, they're like, oh, we kind of screwed up. So we should probably back off and be more supportive and helpful with our rivals. What they didn't know is I had a plan at one point to be like, okay, then the next time you leave town, you're attacked by a random monster that they sort of drove into your way. And you see one of them in the distance sort of watching and that kind of. But it turned out that they, with some good persuasion rolls and whatever, they actually managed to semi-coordinate with Ravensguard in their new attempt to go into Stonehome. So they're going to be like, oh, we're going to come up from this direction and aim for the big interior cave area. You're going to deal with the stuff out in town, which is really just a couple of random encounters and psychic goats. So it could very well be that Ravensguard just sort of cleans up the little bit that's out there and then hangs out and waits to ambush them when they come out, or do something else to make their life difficult. They're rivals, they're not enemies, so they make life difficult, but they probably don't just outright attack. Maybe they'll clean up some stuff and then just leave, abandon them to.
Maybe they'll get corrupted by the stuff.
Maybe. And
that would be interesting to have them start to become friends, and then all of a sudden they're corrupted.
Right. That could be interesting as well. And one of them is a Goliath from the Stone Giant home as well. So they have that connection with them and what have you. So it's been interesting sort of playing up the Ravensguard thing a little bit more. Now I'm going into Stonehome, one of the characters, the Eric Coker that I specifically asked some questions about last time we recorded, trying to give them some more spotlight moments, was negotiating with the head of the Miners Exchange for some things, and she was like, this would be a lot easier for me to facilitate if you were a member of my organization. And everybody in the party's like, like most of them don't have any idea who the Zins are. One player knows enough about the realms that they know who the Zins are, but everybody else is like, we don't know who the Zins are. What is the Zins? So I explained, they're kind of the Forgotten Realms mafia. Put it that, they're like mercantilists, and they're merchants, and they're, profit at any cost, and they'll protect you, but you'll pay for it. And they're like, we're mercenaries. Like, we get it. You want to get paid for doing protection, whatever. And so the Aarakocra, pseudo lawyer bard Aarakocra is like, yeah, sure, I'll join. If that gives me a better deal, no problem. So now I got to figure out what that means. So
he's going to be writing some new Zentarum bylaws.
Right.
Here's how this organization runs now.
There you go. Yeah, that could
There's
be
a new profit sharing plan.
Yeah. Whenever somebody stakes a claim in town now, she's going to send the paperwork to him because he's a lawyer.
Yeah.
So he can take care of all the paperwork and write up the contracts and whatever. And meanwhile, he'll start to get privy to some of the more shady dealings and that kind of stuff. So that could be fun.
I remember when the Zentarum used to be cool.
When they were cultists.
They weren't just mafia merchant people. They were an actual empire that had Darkhold and Semelon, and
they weren't really an empire.
Cool villains. I mean, they were a neat actual they had an army. They had
they were. I think they were an empire.
They're pretty big.
They would have considered themselves an empire because they were trying to.
They were a real threat.
Of course, they would have.
Right, but
they were a real
saying,
threat.
Right?
Yeah, there was all kinds of Zentarum problems going.
Well, they were kind of the. In the Forgotten Realms, you could run into all kinds of different cultists, right? But they were sort of, if you wanted to really ensconce yourself into the major stories and threats of the Zentarum, they would be the sort of mid-tier big bad villains.
Got it right here.
Yep,
the original Zentarum.
Whereas
third edition.
Whereas
third edition Zentarum.
Right, that's not the original. But whereas the Red Wizards would have been like your high tier.
This guy right here.
There you go. That's where
the shrink wrap.
The gray box. Ooh. Mine's not in the shrink wrap because I actually play D&D.
Oh.
Ooh.
What is that?
Ouch.
Wait a minute. I think, why don't we do some counting up of our games this year?
Yeah.
Let's see how it's going. As I tell you about my 75th game session so far.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like hearing about your rival group, Jeff, because my party also has a rival group that they sort of are frenemies with, right? They're not really enemies, and they both found themselves kind of in the same situation at one point. So they ended up like making a kind of a low level pact of just, hey, they were looking for other entrances into the dungeon because the entrance they had both been using was kind of blocked off by those crappy halflings that we talked about a couple times ago. And they made a deal. Hey, if we find an entrance down below, we'll tell you if you promise to tell us. And when they made that deal, the other group said, hey, by the way, one of our group members, Jason, yes, named for Jason and the Argonauts, Jason he got captured. And the goblins took him. So if you figure out where he is and can rescue him, or find out where he is and we'll come rescue him, or we'll come help you rescue him, or if you help us, or what, like, we want him back. He's still alive and we want him back. And so they have kind of this weird, long story short, my group found Jason, but he was being tortured by this really powerful entity in the thing. And they were like, shut the door. Nope. We're out of here. And then they had to make a decision about because they knew they couldn't defeat what was in there.
Yeah.
And so they were like, do we go tell the other group, or do we keep it to ourselves? Like, what do we do? And they they were still trying to make their decision, and they're like, let's just go down again, and then we have to go to town, and when we go to town, we'll like stay the night in town, and we'll talk to a sage, and we'll about what we saw down there, and then maybe we'll make a decision. And then they ended up teleporting somewhere else. So it kind of offloaded their plans. But they were not immediately like, yeah, let's go. I mean, at first they were like, yeah, let's go rescue him. And then they looked in the room. One of them went invisible, and they looked in the room, and there were like 2 enormous 4-armed white baboons and 6 regular sized baboons, which are still huge and horrible, plus one guy torturing the person that they're supposed to rescue, and an obvious magic using NPC on a ruby throne. So they weren't going to rush in there. And
I mean, like, the obvious solution is you tell the rivals you might kill 2 birds with 1 stone and get rid of your rivals. So.
They decide for them it was harder, because if they told him, they would have had to tell them how to get down there, and it was a new secret passage that they didn't want to give the secret away yet. That was, they got greedy. Right? They're greedy. And so, that's going to come back to bite them, because they should have rescued him. They should have told someone and done something to try to get him rescued.
Sure.
But now they're going to have bad effects.
Yeah.
So anyway, but having a rival group is really, really fun, because there's so many different threads to pull around that.
Yeah. So it's tricky to do as well, because like I spent wide swaths of the campaign actually forgetting that they had rivals. They're the ones who kept remembering they had rivals, and they kept doing this undercutting thing and mentioning them, and it's like, oh, okay, I really only instigated them showing up twice in the entire campaign so far, but they kept bringing it up, and so they continue to stay relevant through no effort of mine. So so far it's worked out well. So anyway, I had some things to talk about, but my time is up, so we're gonna move on. And I made a note to ask about those things later. So before we let Mike have his moment, I want to remind people, if you want to come find us on the various social medias, Sam is DM Samuel on pretty much all the social medias. I am Squatch, SQUACH, on all the social medias. Where you can find me, and Mike is not on social media, but you should go to slyflourish.com and buy all of his books. And join his newsletter.
That's for me. Join the newsletter. Maybe the Patreon if you're feeling spicy.
That's Mike's version of social media, is
actually talking to people.
Join the newsletter and join the Patreon, so you can join the Discord and hang out and chat with him.
Sure. That works.
There you go. All right. So, Mike Shea, it is your time to talk about your game. You've been telling us about City of Arches. Are you going to keep doing that?
I have. Yeah, I will continue to do so. So I just ran a game last night. Our characters are 17th level. So I was talking with Michelle today, and I said, I think this is the highest we have run a D&D game in about 8 or 9 years. The last time we did this was Tyranny of Dragons, where we went all the way to 20th. And while I've run a lot of high level, a lot of games from first to various high levels, most of them kind of, the campaigns ended at somewhere between 12th to 16th level.
Sure.
So this is kind of the first time in a while that we've gotten all the way there. And what's really interesting is, I don't know anybody who's got a 17th level game of 3 different 5e systems going on at the same time. So we're now seeing 17th level D&D 2014 characters alongside 17th level 2024 characters alongside 17th level level up advanced 5e characters. So that's been really interesting. And then last night I had 6 of them at the table. So, wrangling, and Michelle was like, man, I threw quite a battle at him. But Michelle's like, man, battles take a long time. And I'm like, hey, the fact that we had a decent story of a lot of stuff happened last night with 6 players with 17th level characters, I'm very happy with how things turned out. I think the battle's maybe an hour and a half, right? And it was a challenging fight.
Sure.
And, I didn't feel like...
that's still not 4E length of battles.
I know, right. Yeah. It was still pretty good. Right. And it was, I didn't pull all the crazy punches. I didn't have waves and waves of combatants or anything like that. It was pretty... it was mostly like the interlude fight where it's like, otherwise you're just going to be talking to people in town for 3 hours. And I was like, something's got to happen. So I had an idea. So the characters are right now. So spoilers for City of Arches, if anybody's playing City of Arches and not GMing it. The Nameless King has been named, right? The Nameless King has returned. His name is Ozymandias. I think I said the characters fought him. I don't know if did we talk about that last time? The characters actually battled Ozymandias and defeated him once, and he's like, okay, I'm going to go get some stuff. So the fun bit is they have the quest to go find 3 of his soul vessels and destroy them. If they can destroy 3 of his soul vessels, then when they fight him next, he won't be able to reincarnate or resurrect or whatever. And meanwhile, he's getting his weapons together, and he's got 3 weapons that he's working on. So they're learning about the quest that he's going on to build his power back up while they're trying to hunt down and destroy his 3 soul vessels.
Does he is he aware of it when they destroy a soul vessel?
I don't know. I haven't decided yet, and it hasn't been exposed to the characters.
They don't know either.
I don't know that. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that you're right. He's his arrogance is really like his downfall. So he may not know. He may not feel it, right? And he might not know what's going on, or he's like, "What am I going to do anyway?" Right? Like I gotta have this stuff if I'm gonna these guys beat me before. I gotta So the first, and they're getting visions of what he's doing. So one of them had a premonition of him going to this like incredibly Lovecraftian split mountain with a big eclipsing sun over it, and he went down into the depths and into a shadowy massive chamber, and he placed his hand on a soot covered thing, and when he rubbed the soot away, it was red scales, and a huge infernal red eye opened up, and it was his old dragon, right, who's been sleeping for 1,000 years, this fiendish ancient red dragon named Zareth. And he's like, hello, old friend. And now he's got his ancient red dragon, that he can fly around on. And then he's going to go to his vault, and he's going to get his staff of the Magi and his robes of the Archmagi, and some other artifacts that are to beef him up. And then he's getting, and the players don't know this yet, but the last thing he's getting is a key to the world of Chul. And Chul is an abyssal realm, right? And it's the realm where the demon prince he had formerly been allied with is from. And he doesn't have an army.
Abraxas, who you thought might be the final?
Abraxas, yeah. Right. So I think he's going to go make it a pact with Abraxas again. He's going to reestablish his relationship with Abraxas because he's like, look, I don't have anything. Like, my armies are destroyed. I got nothing. But if you give me a bunch of demons, right, you and I can be partners again. And Abraxas is like, when you say partners, you mean I get to own you, right? So I think that's how that's playing out. But in the meantime, the characters are doing theirs. Well, the characters are going to the same mountain that Ozymandias went and got Zareth. But now he and Zareth are gone. But there was one of his soul vessels, right? So they're going there to see one of the soul vessels. But last night's game was about mostly like, I'm in this idea of like, we got to have like relaxing interludes between these nonstop, hellish down in the depths of the Tower of Cartan, facing death tyrants and vampire lords and stuff. And so they went back and they talked to some old friends of theirs, and they learned what was going on. And then they were walking back from one of the places, and they went by a fountain, and the fountain churned into this shadow fountain, and the whole realm kind of got surrounded, and all these shadow assassins kind of stepped out, these like 1,000-year-old shadow assassins that Ozymandias said, hired or resurrected and said, go kill those bastards, right? They embarrassed me in front of my friends, and I want you to murder them. So, and they were, I think it was 7 CR10s, right? So like it was 70 CRs worth of guys. They were Forge of Foes monsters, so they were very streamlined. And I told the players up front, like, here's the deal. While that fountain is active, right, the shadow fountain is active, the whole place is under dim light, and any kind of light things that you do are absorbed by it. Like, you're going to have to destroy that. You can do a light thing and it'll flash, but it's not going to, Sunbeam isn't going to do its normal stuff because they're all about light stuff, right? They're all light, all fire all the time. And so this thing, and also shadows are like super advantageous in shadow, but they're really bad when they're not. So I thought the nice thing is there's a fun switch where it's really hard up front. And then the minute they destroy that fountain, it flips, and then the characters get to unleash like all their craziness and destroy them, which is what happened. And it worked out really well. But I told them the other thing is, like, you look at their shadowy blades and realize if they drop you to 0, you die. There's no death saves, right? The minute you drop to 0, and they're like, whoa, and they're like, how much damage did you do? And like, that one did 96 damage to me. That one of them, just one of them, and there's 7 of them, did 96 damage in 3 hits. So we're in trouble, right? Like, this is really hard. And so they had, but it was 6 level 17 characters doing all their crazy level 17 stuff. And, it was a hard fight, but it was pretty easy for me to run. Like, I didn't get overwhelmed. They really had the fun of, I think they were worried up front. And then when they managed to destroy the fountain, they flip the switch, and then suddenly
Right.
all their light spells are working. Now all the attacks are at disadvantage because they're in the middle of sunlight. All these shadow
Right.
assassins in the middle of sunlight.
I say without
And then it
the
was mostly
fountain,
mopping up.
without the fountain thing,
They would have totally destroyed those
seven
guys. It wouldn't
CR10s versus six
Yeah.
or level 17s is like it's a cakewalk.
Yeah. It would have been right. So, so that is a nice way to kind of have a fight where the players knew like what they had to do to get it to work their way. I was worried it'd be like frustrating as hell, but it wasn't. Like they were still hitting them all, right? They're still doing plenty of damage. They just, had all their total cheese they couldn't pull off. So then after that, then they talking to more friends of theirs, and then they found out like, oh, okay, we know we have to go to the total far end of the Deadlands, this desert off on the western side. We're gonna have to go all the way there to get to the Sundered Mountain where this thing is. We need a key to get there. We need an arch key to get there. And they said, oh, that's okay. We have the key. It's actually in the city vaults have it. But you have to go to the Magistrate of Tombs and tell the Magistrate of Tombs you need the key. Don't worry, I've called ahead. He'll know. And so he goes, and the Magistrate of Tombs is this incredible mid-level government bureaucrat who's like, I don't care that you killed Ozymandias in the place. I don't care. I know you're all fancy, but we still have to do this right. Like, let's look at the paperwork you've got here. And at one point there, he's kind of, he went off and they said like, yeah, we're going to have the key. By the way, you want to come to dinner? You can come to dinner at the villa. And he's like, you're inviting me to dinner? And like, yeah, no, you seem like, they were kind of like, at first they're sort of like making fun of him, but then eventually they're like, you're really an important guy, right? Like you're the one dude. He's like, nobody ever thinks I'm important, right? Everybody hates me, right? They come here and all they complain about are bureaucrats. And he's like, yeah, why don't you come on over? So they invite him and his wife to dinner, right? And he shows up for dinner and they have this wonderful dinner with him. And he's telling all these stories about these adventuring groups. And they're like, what's the craziest thing that happened? He goes, the common one are people who say the ghost of my ancestor says it's okay to go loot the tomb, but you can't talk to the ghost because he's a ghost. And so now we have a new rule that says if you have a ghost of your ancestor that says it's okay to raid a tomb, you got to bring the ghost, right? The ghost has to come here and a priest has to come. One of our priests has to come and verify that ghost is actually the same ghost that you say owns the tomb, because you can't just bring any ghost. I'm sure you could go find a ghost to come and lie and say, oh yeah, no, I'm totally this guy's ancestor, and you can totally raid the tomb. So they're just having this grand time with this guy, and he's like, oh yeah, and I brought the key, right? And he puts out the box, and inside is the key. And so they got everything they wanted, but it was this really fun, like this is after the shadow fight, right? After the shadow assassins fight. And they just, it really kind of reminded me of this concept of like comfort RPGs, right? That like sometimes we just want, work day, it's 9:00. We just want to chill out and, have some fun and laugh and not have to worry about getting killed on the next hit.
Saving the world. And
yeah, right. So I've done that a couple of times in this, and mostly because like I tend to throw the kitchen sink at them the rest of the time, right? Like
right.
So it was fun to do do
it's a little bit like my group going back to Phandalin and
yeah, right. You
sleeping in a bed,
some of those interludes, right?
Saving a mutant cow and
yeah. Right. That cow is scary too. The art for that cow in the book is
Daisy's
great.
Badass.
Daisy, I know, but she doesn't look happy. She's wondering why she's got tentacles coming out of her.
She is, yeah.
She's got a big questioning look on her face. So, I remember that art in particular. Mm-hmm. Like I don't think I remember any other piece of art in that book, but I remember the cow with the tentacles. So like that idea, like you need some of those interludes, but of course you don't want it to be too much because like, people get bored too. Like it's pretty, if somebody's not into it, right? All it takes is 6 players. All it takes is one player not being into what's going on to just totally check out and be like, oh my God, are we still talking about the dinner with the freaking Magistrate of Tombs? Like, but they had a nice big fight. So I think I hit, they did all the pillars were there, even though it was kind of heavy on the role play. So the next, they've got 2 more of these soul vessels to go find. One of them is in the Sundered Mountain. The other one is in a temple on a dead world, a world that Ozymandias had destroyed previously. And he left, one of his vessels is there in a massive ziggurat from the cover of Iron Maiden's Power Slave. That, massive ziggurat. And in there is one of his, they have to go to this other world and then find this other one and destroy that. And then they face Ozymandias and whatever he's got. And then I think we're going to have the Dare Zone. And I don't know that the Dare Zone, this is like, they'll hit 20th level when they defeat Ozymandias, right? When they actually kill and fully defeat Ozymandias, they'll hit 20th. And I'm like, it'd be kind of fun for them to have an adventure after 20th level, just something so they can see the stuff that they've got. And at first I was going to have them go after Abraxas because I was like, oh, that makes sense. Except they have a loose thread that one of the other players is interested in, which is they had a fallen celestial who wandered into hell and looked like they were in the process of trying to take over hell. And they're like, we're really worried. This player is like, I'm really worried about, the name was Vriss, right? The celestial that did this was named Vriss. Vriss, they had trouble with Vriss before. But they're like, I'm really worried what Vriss is doing in there. And so the idea that they have to go and find this celestial who has now killed an archdevil themselves and is now an archdevil, and slowly, and is hunting down, who I refer to as Lord of the God Kings, right? The who's in City of Arches lore is named Io, not to be confused with Ao, the Lord of the God Kings from Forgotten Realms, but whatever. Right. So Io is the commander of all the other gods, and this guy Vriss hates Io and thinks that Io screwed up, and is like now has the fiends of hell at their back and can go after Io, so the characters might have a chance to stop Io. I don't know. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do with that exactly.
It'd be interesting if the Vriss storyline, like if what Vriss was doing was enabled in some way by what they're doing to fight Ozymandias. So then it's not just them like, hey, I wonder what's going on with Vriss, or I'm worried about this thing or whatever that we ran into, but it is cleaning up the consequences of what they had to do to stop Ozymandias.
Yeah, right. Well, which had already happened, right? Okay. Because they already let Vriss free. So it was one of those it's one of those wonderful moments. And like when you're running your own, this is where like breaking away from a published, I was just writing about this earlier today, where like being able to break away from a published adventure completely and jump down character arcs. They literally were fighting another corrupted celestial. And one of the players said, I'm going to use Summon Celestial, the spell Summon Celestial, and I want to summon Vriss, who we left down in Sunken Revia. And I had forgotten about Vriss completely. And I was like, oh, that's badass, right? And it was like, this could be worse than the thing they were fighting. So they summon Vriss, and Vriss kills the other Celestial, and it got a hold of something. It managed, there was something they needed, and Vriss managed to get it first. Like a shard or I think it was a key, right? I think it was an arch key. Okay. And it got a hold of this arch key, and it was like the arch key to hell. And they're like, oh man, we were supposed to have that. And he's like, I've got it now. And he started Vriss started wandering down the hall to the arch to leave. And they're like, do we stop him? Do we kill him? Do we let him go? And they're like, I think we got our own thing. Like we got the key we needed. I think we're just going to let that one go. Right. And Vriss steps through a portal to hell and disappears. And they're like, uh-oh.
And now Vriss is the new Zariel, right?
And so now Vriss is the new Zariel. Yeah, I think I have a really kick-ass Zariel miniature I could use for Vriss.
Perfect.
I think I might have used it before.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that might be a more fun angle than just go kill the other demons. Yeah. So I think I'm going to steer. Yeah.
Maybe Abraxas gets involved in it.
Well, why not? Why not both?
Why not both?
Like there could be,
they could both be the same storyline. Abraxas might be there also trying to deal with.
Yeah. So I don't. Right. The good news is I've got some time before I have to worry about exactly how that's going to play out. While they're busy getting. Yeah. I got 3 big arcs that are at least 6 weeks worth of stuff. Until they're ready for their Dare Zone. But it's really fun playing 17th level stuff. Like it's challenging with 6 17th level players at a table, but it's been really, really eye-opening, really fun, and I'm really looking forward to trying something else when we're done.
Yeah, sure.
Which I think right now we're going to do Cairn. I'm doing a palette cleanser of super rules heavy to super rules light for like 2 or 3 sessions. I don't know if you've heard of the Cairn RPG. Super lightweight. It's fun.
It's even lighter than OSE.
It's super light. Yeah. I don't have the book here, but it's like a little leaflet. But I have a box set where the box set itself includes 4 copies of the player's guide because the player's guide is so thin you can just hand them out to people. So I want to try that just to see how my players react to the idea of the old school style, challenge the players, not the characters. You hardly roll dice at all with Cairn. Like Cairn, the only rolls are saving throws, and you're only doing saving throws when there's a real risk.
in OSE, my players are hardly rolling dice because the thing is, if you're rolling, you done screwed up.
Something happened, right?
You messed
put yourself
up,
in a challenge, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It'll be interesting. I don't even know if I like that style, so we're gonna see that. And then Shadow of the Weird Wizard is, I think, the next on the list for that group. I'd really like to do a Shadow of the Weird Wizard.
Yeah. Do either of you listen to
a nice mix?
Do either of you listen to the podcast Worlds Beyond Number?
No.
Okay, so that's Britton Lee Mulligan, Erika Ishii, and Lou Wilson, and Abri Iyengar.
Right.
And Brennan is doing the main campaign, which is a D&D campaign, and they've hit a major milestone recently or whatever. But in between acts of the campaign, they do other stuff, and the other people run games and whatever. And so right now they're on a break, and Erika is running one of their palate cleansing games that they call Hint! Which is, it's basically Clue, the role playing game. They're playing Professor Plum and Colonel Mustard. And
I heard about this. Yeah. Somebody else I was talking to.
The entire I'm listening to it, and they've only released one episode and whatever, and I'm listening to it. I'm like, what are they going to do mechanically? Like there was some indication, I think, at one point in a conversation I heard where they were going to actually use Clue as the mechanics for their role playing game.
Right.
So I'm like, how is that going to work out? And then I listened to the entire first session, and not a single thing was it was 100% role playing.
Story, just
no dice were rolled. Complete role playing introduction of characters.
Wild.
But
it's really hard for me to get my head around. I'm kind of obsessed with Dragonbane at the moment. And I'm still trying to understand how Dragonbane plays into that. And I've heard it's similar, where if you're rolling dice, you done screwed up.
Messed up, yeah. I don't know Dragonbane.
So there's three in OSE, and similar in Dragonbane actually, but there's 3 levels of dice rolling, right? There's combat. So everybody's rolling dice in combat, of course, right? But of course, in OSE, you're trying to avoid combat because it's not always given that you're going to win. And then there's okay, I'm searching for traps, and I'm searching for secret doors, right? So there is a dice roll for that, but it's not necessarily dangerous, because if you're searching for a secret door, you don't find one, or you do. That's not dangerous. And usually, in old school, it used to be, okay, that's a 10-foot wall. You're spending a bunch of times searching.
Right.
I spread it out. It's a bigger area. They spend a turn searching, and they cover a wide area. Right. Okay. But it's the thing where, okay, I'm describing what I'm doing, and if that person says I open the drawer, then they just get to see what's in the drawer. That's, and that's really what it comes down to, is you just have to get used to, they don't have to roll a perception check to see what's in the room. Right. Period.
Yeah. I mean, in Shadowdark, it was even even if you're searching for traps or you're searching for a secret door, you don't say, well, roll a check. You say, how? Right. Tell me what you're doing to look for a secret door. And if they hit the right notes on it, I'll check the cracks in the wall. Oh, you find that some of these cracks are deeper than the others. Okay, I'm gonna give it a shove. Well, tell me about your shove. Right. And it's that idea of when does chance play a fact? When does chance factor in? And it seems like with Karen, it's when does dangerous chance factor in, right? Because if it's there's no threat, then you have all the time in the world. Then you can go poke at that secret door for 10 rounds, and it's not going to be an issue. So why roll a check?
Exactly.
Yeah. But Dragonbane seems interesting because it's the whole page is a giant spreadsheet of skills. So you expect you're rolling on, right? And so I'm still trying to understand what's the arc of Dragonbane, sort of how often should you be asking for checks? And so it's interesting. It's funny because right now, just my little last conclusion. Right now, I'm running 3 high level, or at least medium to high level 5e games. Right. I have my 17th level game. I think the characters
plus.
5e, 5es,
5e
right?
plus.
Lots of 5es. And I have a 17th level game, a 14th level game, and a 9th level game. And I have a feeling this time next year, I'm going to have 3 games that none of them are 5e.
D&D. Yeah.
I think I'm going to be playing all kinds of different games, which is kind of a weird thing to think about.
Yeah. My D&D brief game went to level 18, and they were only at level 18 for a session, and it was the last session. And so the last thing that they did was there was an epilogue kind of thing, but the real last session where they were really in the game, they were 18th level, and it was basically 30 minutes of role playing in the very beginning, and then the rest of it was battle. It was a 3-hour battle.
Yeah,
it was literally the climax of the thing, and it was 18th level, and it was 4 PCs. But they had like 3 or 4 sessions before that with their 17th level. So I dealt with like, so about 5 sessions of 17, 18 level characters, and it is like, it's crazy. It's
a lot of
crazy.
stuff.
It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, when they fight Ozymandias, it's going to be the beginning of the session, and it's going to last the whole thing. It's going to be 3 hours. And I know
that's how a lot of campaigns conclude, right?
Yeah, so. And I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
No, so it was totally fun. It was totally fun. I'm just like, wow, you had 6 players, like 17.
I know.
That is
it was a lot.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Like that's amazing. Yeah, cool.
All right, that is where we will wrap up this episode. If you want to reach out, you can email thetomeshow@gmail.com. If you want to come hang out at the Tome Show's Discord, I will send you the link from there. But otherwise, that's it. So say goodbye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.